Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Welcome. Today we will be having a kick-ass event, obviously. My name is Angela Jin. I'm the co-president of the Junior Hollywood Radio Television Society. Like the mouthful. Also known as JHRTS, one of the partners helping bringing this event to life. If you're not a member already, JHRTS is a professional organization exclusive to junior level entertainment professionals. We focus on networking, education, and charity. Past events include the 35 Under 35 panel in collaboration with The Hollywood Reporter, a Runyon Canyon Hike networking event, and a Game of Thrones panel with HBO executives. So can I have the JHRTS board members raise their hands and stand up? Yes. If you have any questions about joining, come find one of us afterwards and we're happy to chat with you. Before I invite up our presenters, young entertainment activists, I want to quickly talk about the awesome organizations who have partnered with us today. A huge thank you to Netflix for hosting us and having us in your venue. Thank you to CNT Productions, a production company creating opportunities for underrepresented voices on unfiltered platforms, who is currently filming this for live stream. 50/50 by 2020, an intersectional power movement in arts and entertainment. Women Wednesdays, an organization fighting to get female directors hired through weekly screenings and an industry-wide newsletter. QXX, a queer female gender diverse network of YH professionals. And finally, awesome Assistants LGBTQ+. And now I'd like to turn it over to one of my good friends, Allison Biegelman of Young Entertainment Activists.
Hello, Hollywood queers. And allies! My name is Allison Biegelman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a writer. I am a community organizer. I am the co-founder and president of Young Entertainment Activists. And I'm a lesbian. I grew up in a small suburb in New Jersey where the only gay women I knew were Maureen and Joanne from Rent. And despite belting Take Me or Leave Me, lesbian national anthem ad nauseum, I didn't have the awareness to come out until I was 19 years old and living in Los Angeles. Now, Rent was a primer, but when I started to see queer women on screen, that was a game changer for me. I remember I binged all of Orange is the New Black, first season, and I'm sitting there in front of my screen, the credits were rolling, and I was just like, oh God, I can't hide anymore. You know, I have to do it, so I had to start searching for my queer community. Now, my struggle didn't look like every other queer person's. I was and am a white woman, I'm able-bodied, who is straight presenting and had a supportive family. There were physical places that I could go and mentors that I could seek out. That doesn't mean it was easy. I mean, it took years to build the queer community that I have built now. And let's be honest, again, like I built it because I'm an organizer. That not everyone is able to do that. I'm lucky enough to have the resources and the means of protection that I have to get me to this moment. And not everyone does, and I want to put gravity to that. That is why we're here, and that is what we want to provide for all of young Hollywood and for anyone who needs it. Thank you so much. I want to give it off to the badass producer who got your butts in this seat. Before I do, thank you to all the organizations who came together and made this happen, because Hollywood's already doing the work, but this is a product of what happens when we come together. Now I'm gonna bring up the director of LGBTQ. Woo! Solidarity, baby. Now I'm gonna bring up our director of LGBTQ+ programming, Elle Mock.
Hi everyone, my name is Elle. I use they, them pronouns, and I recently came out as non-binary and changed my name and my pronouns. Ever since then, everything I thought I knew how to navigate which bathroom to use, how to navigate the workplace, how to navigate entertainment has been completely new. And, you know, I'm often the only trans person in the room, and it was very clear to me in stepping into this new chapter of my identity that I was gonna need allies and community. So really, this event was born out of that need. So thank you all for being here. And look, all things considered, you know, I've had a fairly smooth physical transition. I have access to healthcare, I have access to hormones, and especially in being trans masculine, I'm stepping into the protection that masculinity affords in our society. But take a walk even a few blocks from here, and my trans siblings, many of whom are homeless, are struggling to access those basic resources like housing, healthcare, jobs, and are the victims of a much higher rate of hate crimes. We all in this room, in some way or another, are here because of our queer and trans elders and allies that have paved the way for us to have this access. And it is our responsibility to carry that torch, pave the way for those to come, and give light to the voices of those who don't have this access. And to talk more, and this is why, because we are the storytellers. And you know what stories do? Create culture. We can change the way we hire people. We can change who we hire. And together, mobilizing as a community, we can affect national and global change. And to talk more about the way Young Entertainment Activists is creating that impact, I'd like to invite up into the stage co-founder and president of YA, Jessica Good.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Good. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I just quit my job to run this full time. I'm really honored and proud to be here today as an ally. This event is a perfect example of why Allison and I founded this organization. We want to bridge the gap across differences rather than feel alienated by them. Our goal is to create opportunities to listen and learn from each other, to have honest dialogue that expands our perspectives and inspires us to act together. If you don't know about us, Young Entertainment Activists is a community of over 1,000 young entertainment professionals that are mobilizing to use their specific skills, resources, and influence to create positive change, both in this industry and outside of it. I invite you all to become members. If you feel inspired by today's events, or by the panelists, or by our mission. Because our vision is to create a movement of engaged, solution-driven, organized people in Hollywood. So let's talk about today. Today we have fantastic panelists who are here as queer leaders from throughout the industry to talk about their experiences and give us unique insight into their opportunities in entertainment or their struggles. We also have workshops after the panel that you will all break into to address each sector of the industry. Each workshop will be led by an entertainment professional that is already doing the work and can help us identify what we can do when we walk out of this room today. So let's get to it. I would love to introduce our incredible moderator. Jill Soloway is one of YA's first champions. They are also a filmmaker, activist, and artist. Jill is the creator of Transparent, which is actually transitioning into a movie musical co-written by Faith Soloway. They are They are also a co-creator of I Love Dick and the winner of 8 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes. Jill has also published 2 memoirs. Jill founded Topple, an intersectional brand for the revolution to create TV and film content, as well as Topple Books, and the organization 50/50 by 2020, among many other things. Please put your hands together for Jill Soloway.
Queer Phil Donahue, Jill Donahue. Why don't we have this TV show? Oh, there's an an extra one here. Do we need both of these? I don't know. Hi, Queer Hollywood. This is so exciting to see all of you here, and I bet you there's like another 1,000 people who would love to be here, if not a few thousand. It's just so cool to see everybody organized in one place. So they asked me if I wanted to be on the panel. I said, I want to run that panel. I want to ask the questions, and they said, great. And so I'm gonna bring some people out. Well, why don't we start with somebody who, at times, I've considered my muse. Her name is Alia Shawkat, and she's queer, and she's here. Come on. She's wearing an alligator dress, and you're amazing.
Hey.
That's a great place for you to sit.
Yeah.
Speaking of icons, Margaret Cho has been out there before anybody doing this. I mean, I have really long bios to read, but you guys don't need any bios. You can Google these people. Okay, let's bring up Kalen Allen. You are a worldwide television personality.
I guess so, now I am.
Yeah. From what I hear here, and we'll talk a little bit more about what you do. Let's bring Ian Alexander up next. Ian plays Buck on OA, and you guys are the youth. You two are the youth. Thank you for being here, youth. Yes, we got our icons, we got our youth, and then I bet some of you guys have wondered, who are the lesbians who make up the lesbian mafia? You know, in the lesbian community, we had our own Brad and Angie, or Brad and Jen, or however you put it, Adam and Eve. Here they are. I'm gonna bring you guys up together. Nina and Rowena, the queerest, coolest women in the biz. This is like, they're the ones at the parties where you're like, where are all the lesbian mafia parties? It's at their house. So I'm just gonna sit over here like a little bit of a host. This is really, really exciting. As you guys can see, everybody's like, it's about shoes, I think, for 2019. It's about shoes. It's about shoes.
For the lesbians, it's about the blazers.
Blazers and shoes. Blazers and shoes. Okay, so I'm just gonna start by asking a sort of general question to everybody, and these guys are all mic'd, so you can just chat in any order, but the thing I was talking about backstage is I think we all really think about what it means to make culture for the world and speak to a queer audience and have queer and trans people feel seen in culture. My question is, what's it like to bring your queerness to the workplace, to the set, to the office, to the people around you, to the people just above you, when you have to take a stand for who you want to be professionally, but you understand that there are a lot of people who it might be better to just kind of like leave your queerness or your transness out of it. How do you bring your queerness and transness to work? Should we just go in order to start? And then we can popcorn it later.
Is this thing on? Yeah? Okay. You know, for me, the kind of blending of it becoming more professional was really started with me wanting to write and create more things that involve these narratives. And I wrote this film, Duck Butter, that was like about me being with and to me it was like just the kind of, it was the story I wanted to tell. I wasn't necessarily like, yeah, I gotta tell this lesbian love story. And so writing it and making it, it naturally opened up just this whole other conversation I was having in press and with people who had seen it, and a different kind of audience that was coming up to me, and we were relating. And to be honest, it was more like subconscious in a way. Like obviously I knew what the story was about, but it was interesting that afterwards being like, right, of course it's two women, so naturally I'm gonna have different discussions and it's gonna be very personal. And it kind of happened, it was more like my actions led the conversations I started to have, where I was like, I only want to make art that is really personal to me. I kind of, you know, I really want to be playing queer characters, because it's stories that haven't been told as much, and it's something I feel more honest in telling as an actor or writer.
I can't really do anything because I have dyke face, and so everyone, like, oh, you've got dyke face. It's like you like have to question things. It's real dyke face, and like so you can't get away from it. And then there's I've been talking about being queer and being bi for so long, and it's still like it's so much a part of my comedy, and generally the people that I choose to work with are also queer, so it's kind of never been an issue. Like it's interesting how it's gone that way. I mean, I've been in show business for so long. I remember it was in the 90s, and I was in a comedy festival, and I was sitting on Leah Deliria's lap. As you got to sit on her lap, I'm just here. And so my manager pulled me aside and he was like, "Are you 100% straight?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "No, you just know that you have to be 100% straight. I don't care what you do, but you are 100% straight." And I was so afraid because I only wanted to be a comedian, and I just wanted to be in this industry so bad. So nowadays it feels so freeing to be able to just kind of be. But there was a time when it was really, I felt almost the end of that in the 90s of real homophobia openly displayed, and it was okay and acceptable. So it's a little easier now for dyke face.
Great. I think as far as the workplace, I have an advantage because I work at the Ellen DeGeneres show, so it's practically like the gayest place on earth. So I don't really have issues there. In the workplace, I think where I find struggle is with fandom and the public eye. I think it's sometimes hard to be both black and gay, and making sure that people don't see it as like a character, or people forcing me when they meet me in person for me to be exactly who I am on video, and it's like, that is who I am, but it's an extension of me, and also it's played up more, but also for me, it's important to always put my gayness first, because I think of black, gay, young men that don't have representation, I wish I would have had a Billy Porter growing up, like if I would have had that growing up, I can only imagine the person that I would have been sooner, I still think I would have been who I am, but I probably would have been willing to be that at an earlier age, because I could have saw that of who I could be.
I guess I've had a different experience in the industry. I am really privileged to be young and to be entering the industry at a point where it's changing and developing and adapting, where queer people can work and not have blatant homophobia against us. But I guess it is weird because I'm usually the only trans person, at least that I'm aware of, on set. And it can feel really alienating sometimes. That's not to say that I don't have allies and there aren't other queer people, but it is very different going through life as a trans person and being very visibly different from everyone else and not fitting the same norms that everyone is used to seeing. And that's why I really appreciate having allies on set who, if they hear someone who doesn't know my pronouns, misgender me and use she, her, they'll be like, oh, he uses he, him. And I really appreciate that, because sometimes it's hard being the only trans person feeling like you have to sort of silence your own concerns to not step on the cis majority feeling.
Yeah. For me, I don't remember a time when I wasn't walking into a room knowing I was out. And that goes back, a long time. And for me, I just was who I was. I think at times because I was out, it put some men off because they weren't sure what to do with me, specifically straight men. There was one time where a director, basically said that, because I was gay, I probably hadn't had the right man, and I actually said I had, and that's why I'm gay. Always through my career, I've just been me. And, I think that, sometimes the jobs have been more corporate than others at studios or networks. And I just allowed myself to be. I have a sense of humor. I think that helps a lot. I think that really changes the game when you can joke with people who might be ignorant. And I think that we as, out gay people, have a job to do, and that is to take people and enlighten them and make them feel comfortable at the same time. And, I'm at Sony now. We are so independently wonderful in all ways. The studio is, the largest independent studio. We've got, we've got we have a gay co-president where, I never think of my sexuality when I walk through the halls. It is what it is. And it's very freeing. And, I don't have advice except to say, be yourself and read the room. I think walking into a room, I remember early on, I used to count the number of people that could or could not be gay. I wanted to kind of know, where did I fit in this group, what was I the only of? Was I in other ways? So, both as a woman, both as a lesbian, and so that's never stopped. I still have that sixth sense. I think that otherness brings that, and you look for others who can relate to you in a room just to see who potentially are your allies. And at the same time, if someone says something that is, ignorant or doesn't know, you correct them. You correct them with a joke. You pull them aside later, but you never give up who you are.
I think what's interesting for me, I work at CAA. I've been an agent there since 1997. So, it's one of the greatest places to be there, because let's face it, two of our managing directors are Brian Ward and Kevin Hubane, who are, very active and very supportive of the community, particularly at CAA. So my struggle was not coming out at work. It's almost, I don't even remember that story. Of course, it took me 30 years to come out to my parents. That was another story for another panel. But I think the interesting thing, because I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist. I'm not a buyer. I'm not an executive. What I am is I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for people who I believe are talented, and all I want to do with those people is help them and guide them through this industry. And it's not an easy thing, but the funny thing is you always find your like people. It's just what happens. Otherwise you'll just torture yourself and burn out and leave the business. So I never questioned the kind of people I signed, even though at the very beginning it wasn't easy to represent female directors, and it wasn't easy to represent gay directors, and it wasn't easy to represent people of color. You've all read the trades, you all know, and the first of this and the first of that. God, my dream would be that someone gets a job and not one article has to mention that they're the first who did something. But anyway, but I just sort of followed where my path brought me. And at one point, several years ago, someone asked me, how many women and gay people and people of color do you represent on your list? What percentage? And I looked, and I was very proud to realize that over half the people that I represented at CAA fell into one of those minority categories. And that is not an easy thing to do at that company or at any company, right? And so for me, what I liked about the idea of talking to this group, the younger group, is that we just need more. We need more, and you have to find your allies, and we need more people who are willing to go into the abyss of signing with an agent, and not necessarily feeling that they see themselves in that room, right? You will find your allies spread around, and try to locate them and try to give them confidence that they can do it. It's really hard. Someone referenced earlier, it's really hard when you walk in a room and you don't see something or someone that you recognize.
I'm going to add one thing, which is I think actually for me it helped. Years ago I was at a job and the agents would call me and say, do you know so-and-so, do you know so-and-so? And I'd say, no, I don't. Every meeting, a gay person walked in that door. And it was because they knew I was out, and they thought, you know what, my client's gonna like this person just because they might have something to talk about. Now that may not be true. I don't fish or things like that, but it is true that it helped in so many ways. Again, because I was identified early on, and it took a while for people to understand that there were more of us, and some were in the closet, some not. But because I was out, I met some incredible people that have still stayed with me today as creators and as writers. And I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go forward, about developing television series based on the stories you have to tell. But it is the perfect time right now to come out and be who you are with these stories that are authentic across the world.
So Ian, I just wanted you to talk a little bit, if possible, about transness and what happens in that sort of space in between queer progress or gay progress, where cis people are talking about women, people of color, queer people, but people are sort of leaving out transness as a gaze, like the idea of creating a trans gaze or centering the trans narrative. There are so many steps to getting to that place of centering ourselves. And I'm just curious how if you do sort of take the time to sit down and educate people around, for example, cisnormativity, how that has worked, if you've ever kind of brought that up or really tried to give people the extra step of education.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, one thing is that, like, as a queer person, it's not my job to educate, like, cis straight people about anything. We don't have to spend that emotional labor if we don't want to. But there have been some circumstances where I sat down with my friends and they asked me questions, and I'm just like, hey, I'm just going to tell you my perspective and my experience, but what I experience as a transmasculine person does not align with any other trans person's experience because, we're all different people. And it's the same for queer people. Like, we all have different experiences and intersectionalities and, different identities and things that happen in our lives that lead to, different outcomes. And so I guess just, like, educating your friends, like, if they say something or, pointing out, like, oh, hey, maybe you shouldn't use pronouns that you don't know, or that person's pronouns, maybe use they if you don't know what they identify as. Or just small things like, hey, maybe have inclusive bathrooms at this event because someone might be too afraid to go into the male or the female restroom, so just have single stall restrooms. It's just like important educating people on things like that, and just having that become sort of their day-to-day ideologies, just being inclusive of trans people and realizing that we do exist and we have existed for a very long time.
So Margaret, I think like a lot of people out there in the world think that intersectionality and solidarity mean the same thing. Do you find that you run into that where people are sort of asking you to stand for like queer people, assuming like, hey, we're all in the same struggle, and how do you parse out the difference of being a person of color when people sort of want intersectionality to mean solidarity?
Well, I think it's very deep, because I feel like just within even in sort of gayness, there's a lot of gay people who feel like, oh, well, I can't possibly be racist, sexist, homophobic because I'm gay, and I'm already dealing with the gayness otherness, so I can feel free to write on my profile of like Grindr or Scruff, no fats, no femmes, no Asians, that kind of like weirdness of like that we sort of experience a lot within the gay community. And so it's kind of like, it's a weird thing to kind of have to do. I don't want to do all the explaining that, like, why should we have to educate even our own community or feel left out by our own community? I always feel left out too, just being bisexual, because we're kind of like the weird, like, traitorous part of the gay community. Like, you're actually straight, or you're actually gay, and you're lying about it. And this is like the duality of it. We have like a dumb flag, which I have a problem with. Flag. That's another issue that I have to deal with. But it's that kind of thing of like, I wish that we could have more solidarity and intersectionality, inclusivity, that kind of stuff. That takes so much explaining that you kind of get minority fatigue Like, I'm actually like really too oppressed right now. I can't. Like, I'm drowning in otherness, and I'm like not. It's a lot. So, just trying to balance it. Like, I was trying to approach it with a sense of humor because laughing about it, I think makes people really understand, and then they recognize it, and so I'm grateful for that. But it's tough.
Speaking of bi, which is going to be the name of my talk show, bi. So way before Duck Butter, I feel like you were kind of one of the first out bi people, maybe after Margaret. Like, did you make a big announcement? Did you feel that you had to make a big announcement? How did that pop off?
I did an interview with Out Magazine, and for this film, and we were talking, and then it was like really the last question where they didn't even ask me necessarily my sexual orientation, but they kind of were like, something like, what struggles do you feel like are being represented or something, and I was like, as an Arab American and as a bisexual, I'm this, something like that. And then I was like sitting on a corner in like Beverly Hills, like on the dirt somewhere, I don't know why. And then I just remember like afterwards being like, oh, that was a pretty good interview. Like, it got personal, and I like that. But it was the first time I had verbalized it in a public setting. Like, people in my life, not necessarily my parents clearly yet, but friends of mine had known, and ex-girlfriends and boyfriends of mine had known. And then it was funny because once the interview came out, friends of mine who obviously knew were sending me like, congratulations, you're bisexual. Thank you so much. So it's kind of funny because on a personal level, people were like, yeah, we knew. But then the timing of also like the zeitgeist we're in, I started like so many more opportunities became clear. Not necessarily jobs as an actor, but groups of people I was meeting and other creatives who were like, I'd love to interact with you about certain things, or panels, or just overall, and it was affecting my work in this way that I started to get sent parts of queer characters in ways that before I was like, there just weren't as many queer characters, or people, like, I liked playing characters that were women, but not necessarily just about them finding some guy, or like, I don't get laid, I don't get married. It was like, that was never the storyline anymore. And not just being like, she's a tomboy, like, she's a little different, she's tough. I had gotten that all my life though, and it was like an energy I'd always put out, where I used to be like, I just want to play that character, the guy character, because he's not defined by who he's trying to have sex with. And he doesn't have to be kind of shy and quiet the whole time and be like, well, maybe I'll see you later, I really found it so boring. I was like, I don't really want to do that. So it's been truly, only positive professionally because of that. And just made it more of a clarity the minute I said it, even though it wasn't like this big thing for me, it clarified the kind of stuff I wanted to do all of a sudden and who I was working with.
That's so cool. It's almost like, that your queerness and your bi-ness were able to kind of like reinforce your identity as female, to say like, it's not just about being a woman, it's about being a certain kind of woman.
Yes.
I remember like always feeling, when I would see movies of the women, it'd always be like, how was the adventure? How was it out there? Was it cold? You didn't call me in the middle of the movie. I'm waiting here for you to come home. What's it like being the lead in this movie? I'm just your wife waiting at home. How was the plot? Was it fun to have a plot? So Kaden, you were mentioning backstage that sometimes you feel like you want to put your queer identity first before your identity as a person of color. How do you differentiate what needs to come out, what needs to take center stage?
Oh.
If something needs to take center stage.
That is very, very, very layered. Let's see. I would say, I guess I choose to put my queerness first, and not because I feel like I experience more oppression because I'm gay than I do black, because that's not true. I think I do that because I think there's less representation for being queer in a black male. I think for me, one of the things that right now, like I mentioned, Billy Porter, I think Pose is like the first time that I've ever watched something was like, wow, this is my life, and has something that I identify with, and I think that's why I put it first. And I think about like Nigel Shelby, like I think it's important for these kids that can't go anywhere and find love and find somewhere to fall into, that I can be that representation for them. And I think the only way that I can do that is if I put the gayness first, you know, because I think there are other places that they can find the blackness, you know? You can go other places and find that kind of representation, but I think it's very hard, especially because I know that I come from a place where my audience is largely Caucasian, you know, and isn't so much black. So I know that I have more visibility, you know, and I know I am able to reach audiences that a lot of people don't have access to. So that is why I decide to put that forward in everything that I do, so that people feel like they have somewhere to come home to.
This is a good question for you, Rowena. As we were doing the work with 50/50 by 2020 and going to some of the agencies and talking about, you know, where are the female agents, where are the queer agents, where are the agents of color, one of the sort of biggest things that we noticed was like that there were really no trans agents anywhere. And as an artist, when you're coming up with your project, whatever it is, say you've written a pilot and you're trans and your pilot's about you, and then you show it to a cis agent, and the cis agent then has to sell it amongst other cis agents. So like, let's say as a queer woman of color, a trans woman of color comes to you with her story, and then she leaves the room, and there you are at CAA with probably what, like 80% white straight men. What happens then when the door closes without anybody trans there to take a stand for the centering of the trans narrative?
Well, I mean, I think that we do have a few agents who specifically look out for trans and the folks like you're talking about, but it's not even that specific. I mean, at CAA, one of the tenets of our signing and our representation of people is that we respond to them as artists, we believe in them as artists, and who they are, how they present themselves, is sort of secondary to what it is that we see their talent being, that we can help grow. Right? And so it starts there. I mean, we're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna sign people just because they're trans. We're not gonna sign people because we look at the numbers and we're like, oh, we're weak there, we're strong there, we don't need any more of those. But what I think the bigger point of representation at agencies is that I want to be a part, some of my colleagues here want to be a part of recognizing those voices, perhaps a step before CAA would normally have signed them, right? So I signed a young New Zealand filmmaker off of a short film, a short, like literally an 8-minute short. I just believed in him, I met him, and I know it was early. You don't, at CAA, you don't really sign people who haven't even made films. And I just said, I just know this guy is brilliant. He's gonna go all the way, like I'm gonna take a shot. And you know, however many years later, it's Taika Waititi who directed Thor, you know, and so, you know, and given that I am an ethnic person who is gay and a woman, I got a lot of those people that I like try to help move up to the next thing. So for me and my colleagues, I think that one of the things we do is we pay particular attention to people on the outside. I'll put that in quotes because I don't mean to marginalize anyone, but I think you know what I mean. We pay particular attention to them, and I think one of our jobs is to try to identify and sign these people before a big agency would normally do so. Because I think if that sort of help up, that sort of, you know, I get it, you know, you just made a short. Come back when you've done a feature. I don't know where Taika would be, right? And you know, same with Patty Jenkins. Like, She came to me with a screenplay that hadn't even been shot yet. But I said, I see something in this woman. And I signed her, and that movie was Monster with Charlize Theron. However many years later, she did Wonder Woman. So I hope that what I'm trying to do within a system that likes to play it safe in terms of signing people, what are their credits? Who do they know? What have they done? What are their relationships? I hope that what I do is I help the next generation of people who want to be representatives, agents and managers, be brave to take those chances, because recognizing talent and authenticity is one of the things we are supposed to do. You shouldn't be in this job if you can't do that. So that's kind of how I want to help, like, fix the balance of the people you see in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Awesome, thank you. So Nina, I'm just going to keep coming back down this way. Do people, when queer and trans creators come in to pitch, I mean, for me, like when I'm getting out there and pitching to cis people or to cis men who want me to kind of welcome them into a way of forgiving them for their cisness, and meanwhile I'm feeling like all this rage that they're forcing me to represent my queerness in a way that a straight man can relate to it, and I'm just thinking, I can't believe I'm actually having to pitch to a straight man right now, and I have to kind of keep it down and try to enlist a sense of like, we're in this together. Do you have any advice for people who are coming into pitch when there's rage coming from every pore in their body about not being able to pitch to people who look like them?
I think I knew the answer until the rage part came in. I think this is the time of authenticity in all ways and storytelling. There are a lot of stories out there that feel samey in some ways. It goes back to the days of, procedurals and doctor shows, and I think everyone now, because of the plethora of series, we all have to find something people haven't seen yet. And that is really the key to all storytelling, is creating stories that we want to watch because we haven't seen it, we don't know this story, it's different. And it all comes from authored point of views. And those point of views are valuable. Those point of views are valuable because they change people's minds. And so I would never hear a pitch and say, yeah, it's just too gay. I would never hear a pitch and say it's too anything if it feels honest, if it feels authentic, if it feels specific. That really is what storytelling is. And that's, I think, what's making its mark now, whether you're, and whatever your otherness is. In all ways, I think that's important. I work in an international space. We're listening to stories from South Africa. We're listening to stories from France, from the UK, from India, and all of these stories. And thanks to places like Netflix, thanks to places like Amazon, and thanks to all of these new streaming platforms that are global, and there are going to be more that are global. You can't believe it, but you know what? Your stories are relevant to other people. And that, I think, is important in all ways from all countries. If you think about Fleabag, it's one of the most incredible shows from a British point of view, but it's so relatable and so culturally specific, but relevant and relatable and universal to everyone. That's it. That's where storytelling is. And so even the cisgender people that incite rage have to stop talking because it's a business. And we know that this is the time to take stories people don't know and come out and be the first to tell this story and make it.
So I'll start this with the rest of the panel. I guess we would call it the reckoning, the thing that happened a couple of years ago in Hollywood where things really just started to shift. I almost feel like there was this unspoken thing in the room. It was like, yeah, feminism, yeah, intersectionality, but like when the door is closed and we still go back to this thing of like, yeah, people make jokes and people talk about women that they want to hire based on what they look like. And then I really felt, for me in my life, like things really changed. I think when the thing first happened with Harvey Weinstein, I felt this like unbelievable relief because I literally thought that I was going to have to change the world by myself. And I was like, no, we're all doing it together. Everybody's doing it together. Everybody's changing the feeling of being in a room, and no, it's not okay anymore to allow this kind of misogyny and toxic masculinity to be the order of the day and just norm at work. Everything started to change. People couldn't yell at work anymore, or I hope they would yell at work less. This idea that the internet was creating this kind of gaze where you could get called out and you could face real consequences for bringing toxic masculinity or misogyny or rage to work. Did you guys feel a difference in your workplace? And if so, what has been the difference over there? Have you felt tangible difference in what the collective idea is about what's appropriate?
I think in comedy is always kind of like the last to really change because comedy is such a boys' club. And so there was this kind of thing that's really caused a rift in our community because it's like these men that are so angry that they've lost the right to all these things and that their main leader, Louis C.K., got knocked down. You know, it's like so simple. Just don't take your dick out. Like, why? Nicely. Like, there's so many people who would love to watch him jerk off, and he just didn't ask nicely. So entitled. You know, because they all wanted to watch him edit his fucking show, so that, you know, they would love to watch him jerk off. But if he had just been a little bit humble to ask. But, you know, and I'm a rape survivor, and I was doing a lot of material about that in comedy clubs, and a very famous white, straight male comedian came on after me, enraged, and was yelling at me in front of the crowd, to the audience, how I poisoned them. How do you even talk about this in comedy? Why are you bringing this subject in here? And it was crazy. Like, I think that it's just so divided now in comedy, and people are like, oh, well, Louis C.K. has to be able to do comedy again, you know, and it's just like, well, why? You know, it's that thing of like, you're still licensing all of this bad behavior and giving him the ability to do it because of genius. I hate that thing of excusing terrible rape behavior with the moniker genius, because we've seen it over and over.
Please have some water, Margaret. That's what we're all doing.
This dyke face is really going today. Pull it down.
Cis people aren't watching this anyway. What about you? Do you guys have any? Have you noticed a real difference in your workplaces?
I feel like I kind of started working while the change was happening, and I wouldn't be able to work in this industry if there wasn't some sort of massive change happening. And even just like within the past year or so, like so many more opportunities have opened up recently for trans people, and like specifically trans masculine people in the past year than there has been since I started acting like 3 years ago.
Yeah, what about you, Kaden? I know a lot of times people come to this and they want like specific pieces of advice, but it feels to me like Ellen came to your college and plucked you and brought you to Hollywood. And everybody says like opportunity is preparation plus luck. Like, what did you do so that you were ready? How did it happen that happened for you in your career?
Yeah, okay, so it was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I made a video about some cornbread. And I put it on social media, and celebrities got a hold of it, like Seth Rogen and those, and Chrissy Teigen started retweeting it. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ellen. I flew out here.
Wait, take us through the call. Was it her? Was it somebody?
No, it wasn't her personally.
Okay.
It was the team, and so they called me and asked me would I come out and be on the show. I came out. Ellen offered me a job that same day. As soon as I left, I said absolutely. I signed the deal, went back to Philadelphia, packed up all my stuff, and I moved to LA. And since then, I've already done a movie. So but the preparation comes from the good thing, because I was studying the industry. I already knew how to work, so I knew how to get an agent. I knew how to get a publicist. I was like, okay, so how do I maximize this one opportunity to expand it? Because the one thing is that the original deal was that I would do what I did from Philadelphia. I told them I'm going to move to LA because I knew if I was more accessible to them, then more opportunities would come.
Because left your dorm room empty, you're like, bye, roommate.
Hell yeah. Okay, I had a bag to secure.
I feel like we have really similar sort of stories because I booked my first role, like my first professional acting role ever, off of Tumblr. Like I was 14 years old and I was scrolling on Tumblr in my parents' house and saw this casting call for a 14, 15-year-old Asian American trans male actor. And I was like, well, that's me, so I mean, I should do it. I've never acted before. Whatever, they probably won't reply. And then I got the role, and I was like, oh, shit, I'm doing this. So I, moved out to LA a few years later, finished out high school first, and it wasn't as quick as like getting a call and then immediately moving, but I feel like this could only happen in this day and age. Like opportunities for people like us come out of the internet, which is amazing.
Right.
Like if you hadn't gotten viral, you'd still be in Philadelphia. If I hadn't been on Tumblr and gone out on that open casting call, I would still be living with my parents probably. So.
Margaret, I'd love for you to talk about the sort of waves that you've seen. I really remember when you first were out there as really like, I think the first Asian American to have to be the lead of your own sitcom, right?
Yeah, but it took, it took 25 years to see it again. I mean, that 1994, we had All American Girl, which is my show, and then also the Joy Luck Club. And we thought that, oh, maybe now we're going to see Asian Americans in television and movies, maybe now. And then we didn't appear again, unless it's like a procedural and there's like Trouble in Chinatown. They have to go to like the old shop and there's like gangsters and it's like everybody's doing martial arts. It's like the whole thing. Like you would think that it would have happened, and so now I think we're definitely seeing a shift. But it took 25 years, and and that's really a difficult thing to think about. And I think nowadays it's really like we have to get as many Asian TV shows and movies out because we have to make sure that the white people don't change their mind. Like we have to now before they change their mind, because they like to change their mind. It's got to get in there, and so it's very much this thing of like, do you think they really mean it this time? Oh yeah. Every Asian American I know is doing like multiple projects, and we're just trying to, get in there and do it. And fortunately, we have that strong like Asian American like work ethic. Like we all graduated from Harvard, and now we can do something. So it's like a very important thing for now. But it's like I haven't seen it like this before.
Yeah.
But now I think what has really like fueled me is meeting young artists, and it's like Ellen. I actually used to open for Ellen back in the day. She's had a very long history of sharing the spotlight. And that's really special about her, and it's really something that we who have the ability to do that can find young talent and push them out there. And for me, that's really enriching, and then I learn a lot, because I learn a lot so much from the younger people who are helping me. So it's great. It's great when the old dyke can learn new tricks. So I'm very enriched by that. It's moving.
I wanted to ask Rowena and Nina another little question. Somebody had mentioned to me, just sort of I heard off the cuff, that training at CAA involved guys holding the elevator for girls, that was part of the trainee training, that there are ways in which the binary was just sort of casually upheld. Guys do this, girls do this. Are you finding that people are aware of non-binary identities in the workplace, and are people willing to kind of ungender spaces and know that they can't do the thing anywhere where male agents do this and female agents gather this way? Are there non-binary POVs, not just in the assistant pool, but sort of in the for the seniors like me, active non-binary seniors, nifty over 50,
YMCA will make sure to have that bathroom.
Thank you. Yeah, or my own elevator, so nobody tries to hold the door open for me. No, but what is a non-binary person, professional person, to do in spaces where it still is mainly like men need to do this and women need to do this, and there's actually like no space for the non-binary folk?
I don't actually feel that that's not the feeling I get when I'm in the building. My assistant Albert's here, and he can speak for sort of the younger sect of that building.
Albert? Oh, Albert. Okay, Albert.
But
Albert's sobbing. He doesn't want to. Don't make me speak.
oh, it's right there. It's right there. I mean, you know, you'll back me up on this, but it doesn't. You will back me up. No, but remember that 2 of our managing board members are gay. It doesn't, and there are a shitload of incredibly strong, successful women at that company. I've never, just even putting the gay thing aside, like I've never felt discriminated against because of my sex or because of my sexuality or because of my race or because I check a lot of boxes here, and I feel that the administration has always been welcoming. So that's not the problem that I can identify. The problem I can identify is that I just don't see enough of the next gen. I'm the only lesbian in the motion picture department, and there's one gay man in the motion picture department on the talent side, and that's not enough. That ratio is not enough, and so it's really about how do we bring in those people, and that's sort of what I referenced earlier. In terms of clients, identifying them earlier and signing them earlier than we might have. But we have to also do the same for the employees, for the people that we pull in, and hopefully see what it's like Albert has for a little over a year. And now Albert wants to be an agent, and he is...
Albert, why?
And he is in the training program, and has gotten... He's gotten incredible recommendations from everyone because you have to pass a barrage of tests and interviews and all sorts of things. And while, not to out you, but while Albert is not gay, he is.
What are you doing here? That's gross.
He is, he is minority, as I said before, because I represent so many of those iterations. I feel that I'm never going to hire an assistant who doesn't fall into one of those categories, because we need to help those young people come up.
I feel this audience like chomping at the bit, so I want to allow some people to ask some questions. They also want to run around like Jill Donahue. Are there any questions out here where I can throw a microphone in your face for a moment? And you can ask the questions that I haven't asked. Yes, do you want to?
Hi, I just want to thank you all for coming out. It's less of a question, more of a comment, just to sort of speak to the next generation and trying to encourage diversity. I think the problem that I've noticed is just the pay discrepancies, and that a lot of the time people that are able to take these lower level positions, I actually got into the UTA training program and couldn't accept it because the money was so bad. And I feel like a lot of times we do kind of unknowingly encourage size white males into the industry, because a lot of times those are the people who can have their parents pay for their living or pay for whatever. So that is, I think, would be a big step to encourage diversity. Would be, if it's not increasing the pay, which would obviously be great, if there were scholarship programs or something like that.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I'm just going to say one thing to that end. So Sony is starting a diverse writers program, and is going to be, you know, a place where the scripts that are picked and chosen will get the writer will get a blind script deal, substantial script deal, in order to do some of those things, which is to pay people for the talent they have in an amazing way in the writers program, and the same in the directors program, to really accept from elsewhere. And as I was told, no white dudes. I'm gonna actually say yes, trans white dudes, yes. Absolutely.
I feel like trans white men are still white men. Like we all have a level of privilege to some extent, like whether it's masculine privilege like I have, or like white presenting privilege or stuff like that. It's not to say that we need to reject and alienate those people, but it's time for people who are more marginalized to have voices and to be visible as well.
Hi, should I stand? Okay. Hi, I'm Jay. My pronouns are they, them. I actually work at CAA. I'm an assistant, and I think, I could be incorrect, but I think that I'm the first, or one of the first trans assistants that CAA has ever had. My question is probably for Ian specifically, but anyone can answer this if you have an experience that speaks to this. But I think that sometimes it's hard for me where I very actively pick up on people being either uncomfortable or unsure about how to just like socially engage with me. I've been on hormones for about 10 or 11 months now, and like just the clothes I wear, the dress code at CA is extremely gendered, where almost all the guys are wearing suits, almost all the women are wearing something else. And especially for someone who people might perceive as male, even if you're not wearing a suit, like immediately clocked that like this is a different type of person. And so if anyone can speak to like others' discomfort and how you navigate that and still like find a way to do your job effectively, yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of the important things about avoiding that discomfort is to have more trans people in the room so that people know who you are and how to, you know, respectfully ask about your pronouns, you know, because if you're the only trans person in the room, you're always going to feel alienated. That's why we need more, you know, non-binary people, more trans masculine people, more trans feminine people who are assistants and working behind the camera, and, you know, in agencies and actors and all kinds of people in the industry.
Yeah, we started something on the Transparent Musicale finale, where we put pronouns on the call sheet. Yeah, it was great to have that. Yeah, it seems simple. And then one of our production assistants who's non-binary went to work on their next show and mentioned to the line producer and the AD, like, what would you think about this if we put pronouns on the call sheet? And the producer said something like, that's above my pay grade. Like, just to be able to think about pronouns at work would just turn things too complex for people. And I think, you know, I really want to ask the right questions here, because we have an audience of people who seem very literate. And I think the questions are maybe more about how to, like, for example, you know, Rowena said nobody has an issue with the gender at CAA, and then you said I'm an assistant there and I do have an issue. It's hard to feel like I need to be one gender or the other in terms of like the dress code, for example. So here's a moment where, you know, speaking truth to power and having Rowena here, like, how can we actually, you know, I think the position, one of the things that happened when we were doing our first training, where we got everybody back for our consent training at Transparent, after we had some, you know, upsetting things happen, was we did the usual training, and people said things like, you know, if you're gonna hug somebody, just ask first. And I kind of like went running up, even though it wasn't my job to be doing the training. And I said, and I just want to also remind people that if you're white or if you're male and you ask somebody for a hug, it's going to be very hard for that person to say no, because we live in patriarchy and white supremacy. So a white man asking a young female assistant for a hug, she's probably going to give it to him because she doesn't want him to go to work and say she's not very nice. So the people who have the systemic privilege of cisness, of whiteness, of maleness, and even cisness in terms of, you know, being a gay agent, I think need to start to recognize that people who don't have that cis privilege actually can't say easily, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. And I'm gonna tell you again the next day it makes me uncomfortable, and every day, because it causes trouble at work to be that squeaky wheel who's reminding cis people of their privilege. And you kind of have to like squeak through until you get like enough power that you can do things like, you know, make sure everybody's wearing their pronouns at work. Can we go a little bit further into this question of, I think it's a generational thing. Like a lot of young people are really comfortable with the they, them pronouns. And then people of a different generation say like, I mean, I know that we talked about like, it's hard, you don't want to make a mistake. What is to be done?
I think one of I think putting pronouns on the call sheet is amazing. And it kind of disappoints me a little bit that people would think that that's too much effort. Because it really isn't. I mean, you have people give their name anyways, so why not just give your name and pronouns? And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, and the more normalized it becomes. I mean, like when everyone was being introduced, they'd say, hi, my name is so-and-so, my pronouns are this and that, and then it's done. It's like really simple.
I think it feels natural for a certain generation, and it doesn't feel natural for the older generation. So I think about the hallways at CAA, and I think about all the cis men I know there, and the encounters that I've had where they've been like, I don't know what to say. What you're, how do we help the cis folks who are sort of like higher up to not only want to help trans and queer people, but to be willing to be vulnerable about their lack of information? How do we help people to want to seek you out? I don't know, what did you say your name was? Jay, to seek Jay out and say, Jay, like, let's get this right for you in the training program. Yes.
My name is Matt, I work at Warner Media, and I run our LGBT group, and one of the things that we initiated was in our email signatures, we put our pronouns with a link, so we didn't have to explain it directly to people. They can click and learn themselves what each means. And I've had many people come up to me, excited about knowing that there is a safe place that's sort of an identifier of someone who is comfortable and safe and you can be open with, but it's also a way to educate people without that sort of awkward, I don't know how to address this thing, and it's sort of caught on. It's a slower movement. You sort of have to push to get some of the old guard involved, but it's a really effective way to start that conversation.
Awesome.
No, I just think that normalizing the conversation is important because obviously we want our allies to be there for us. But I have had a lot of cisheads, as I like to call them, who feel uncomfortable just having that conversation because they feel as if it's out of place or they're being rude and they don't want to be reprimanded, right? And I think that unfortunately the burden of responsibility does sometimes fall on the queer community to have to educate, which is exhausting, right? But I think that if people make mistakes, oftentimes comedy or just being vulnerable, being like, yeah, fucking shit happens. Sometimes we do mess up a pronoun, you say you're sorry, fix it the fucking next time, you know? But I think having that sense of empathy for those people, for the cisheads who are making these mistakes and being like, hey, it's a simple conversation. They're just a person like you and I. It goes a long way to change that dialogue because I think if you're scared of having the dialogue to begin with, then how are we gonna grow?
Important not to be scared because it says literally it's like right now is the first time in history where we've been able to say I don't want to see your dick, and that's this is like the first time, and so it's just like why should we be afraid of like making sure these like small details are like we don't have to be sensitive about it for them, you know, they've gotten away with too much for too long and we don't have to silence it, we don't have to be afraid.
I want to run over here and do like.
Hi, my name is Mariana Marroquin. I'm really happy to be here. I'm representing the Trans Wellness Center in the energy in this room. Really happy. But before we change the world, I'm thinking about like I want to ask like what are we doing about like reaching the people outside in Hollywood, a lot of like queer community out there. And I just want to hear about what we're doing about that. I think it's important to reach out and to know that each of you have the power to do something about what's happening out there. A lot of people have dreams and full of talent, and they're waiting for that opportunity, and don't ever forget that. Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Alexis Fitch. I'm the VP of Pride at The Hollywood Reporter and Billboard and MRC Films. It's a big company called Valence, and yes, they created a position called VP of Pride. I don't think it's your responsibility to have to educate everybody about all the issues, but what I'm seeing is, I came in and changed my signature block. I introduce myself in meetings every single time with my pronouns. I remind people in their language when they introduce people not to use gendered language. So I tell them, please don't say guys, you can say y'all, you can say folks. But I wonder if we can go back to our respective companies and say, listen, here's an ally, or my job, what I do is I say to everybody at this huge 3,000 person company, ask me the questions that you think are dumb. Send me the emails that you think other language is wrong. If you are going to write an article and you don't know that, I just got this email and it's one of the best emails of my life. Hey, we're doing an article on Paris is Burning. Was that a drag revolution? What was that? And I have to bounce back and be like, no, it was about ball culture. If you feel comfortable being the person that sits in the room and is like, hey, makeup artist, I noticed that you just assumed that person wanted a female look. Why don't you ask them? How do you want to be represented? Maybe let's not call it their bust, let's call it their chest. Maybe let's not emphasize their hips. So make yourself a self-appointed guru, or ask your company to appoint someone. Because I can't tell you, people come to me and they don't know, they don't understand. But Valence Media, I'm not trying to count, but there's a company in Hollywood that it's kind of important because they write about the industry, said to me, go queer these verticals. Go make these people smart.
Wow.
Take it upon yourself in your CAs, and your UTAs, and your Warner Brothers to educate. I get to affect so much change because I put myself out there. I'm paid to put myself out there and be like, no dumb questions. And I'm going to come to you with grace and kindness and tell you when you make mistakes.
After you've heard everybody speak and you're hearing sort of the energy of this very queer and queer-centering audience, do you guys want to speak a little bit more about just this moment where we have so much energy and it's so exciting, yet there's so much work to do if we're looking for, let's say, a queer majority or trans majority of agents in studios. When, sometimes I'll talk to people at UT and I'll say like, hey, let's get some trans agents. And they'll be like, well, everybody needs to come up through the system. And I go, find somebody in Chicago who's not an agent, but who's a lawyer, and just bring them in horizontally at the top. Because it's a state of emergency around identity and around protagonism. This question of like photographs and like somebody does your makeup and they assume you want to be femme. I found that like at every single step I have to stop and, like as I was getting photographed, I started by saying, okay, I don't want to have femme makeup in my photographs anymore. And so I would make sure when I was getting my makeup done, I would say, just do what you do on a man. And then it would go to the retoucher, and the retoucher would put blush and mascara on me. Because people think, well, girls want to be pretty. And that's a girl, and girls want to be pretty. And I started to feel that if there weren't non-binary people at every level, so the magazine editor who assigned the article, a non-binary photographer who came out, a non-binary retoucher who understood that I wanted to look like both and neither. And I had to keep bugging people at every single level over and over again, every day, because there aren't any non-binary editors, photographers, retouchers. I think people don't want to wait 20 years for people to come up through the mailroom and be able to hear a pitch and not say, yeah, I want to help this trans person who's pitching, but say, this trans person is me who's pitching. What do we do to hurry up the state of affairs and not have to wait for people to rise when the world is changing so much more quickly.
I think there's something, oh, sorry. Okay. I was just gonna say, something to be said about, I don't know from studio perspectives, but from people you want to collaborate with creatively, and even if it's a producer, that I continuously, like I've been in the industry for like 20 years, and by the time now that like the last 5 years that I've been wanting to make my own projects, and especially with the change that started to happen, I was like, I don't need to go off of like, this is who you should work with, this person's experience, this person, and usually that list is a lot of white men, you know? And I was like, I just don't relate. They're not gonna understand the story about women's sexuality, and I don't wanna talk about it with them, honestly. And then it's like making instincts based off of creative people you know, who maybe don't have the experience because they haven't had the opportunity, to be like, let's write this together, or will you help me produce this? Will you go in there and pitch this with me? Will you start, at least come on set of another job I'm doing? Because I've had experience, I want you to be there, and I want to start making stuff together. It's really not just being like friends, but it kind of is, like instincts you have about people. Now it's like I only work with people I genuinely connect with. And on a personal level too, you know, where it's not just being like, gotta do the job for him, you know, and this kind of like awkward adjusting that it takes. So collaborating with people that you trust creatively and like an instinct, even if they don't necessarily have that kind of experience.
I'm going to speak from a standpoint of an influencer and a content creator. And I say that to be more aware and responsible on the people that you promote and support, especially when they appropriate other cultures and get a lot of fandom and a lot of followers and a lot of retweets. Because a lot of times for me, and I know that I come from a place of privilege because I'm at a studio, I have one of the most powerful people, you know, in the world behind me. But I think it is important to make sure that we are making sure that credit is given to where credit is due, you know, and not supporting people that only just steal from other people and then promote them and then they get all the brand, you know, partnerships, or they get to take the free trips, you know. I think there's a lot of times that I speak to other friends of mine, especially like other YouTube creators that have been doing it for a very long time. They don't look white or, you know, or on a certain sexuality or something like that, and they don't get the same opportunities because they don't get the same visibility, mainly because they just don't get the same support, you know? So it's like, that's very important. If you want to see different kind of representation, you have to make sure that you are supporting that representation that you want to see.
So what do you guys think about the pipeline thing and the Rowena and Nina, in terms of these companies where it would take too long to really get it to a place of gender parity or even cis trans parity? What's the solution there?
Some of these questions are, I've only been at Sony for 7 months, so it's a little hard for me to really discern everything about the process. But anyone who's looking for a job, there are job boards and HR then advertises for jobs, right? I know for a fact they do not specify what kind of person, cis, trans, should apply for that job, right? So it certainly starts in a way from who's qualified, really, because ultimately you have to have the skill set to do some of the jobs that we're talking about, and you have to be given an opportunity. But the question is, what position are we trying to fill? And I'm not aware, and I'm certainly happy to ask, and will ask, are we turning down anyone that should be qualified, that is qualified? I can't believe that we're turning down someone who's qualified based on other elements. It seems really, I love the idea of what Warner Media is doing with females. I'm happy to go back, and I will go back on Monday and discuss that. I think it's a great idea, and why not give it a shot? So I think this is how we come together and hear how other people are doing it. And it's the same for hiring people. It's about, you know, again, it's I hear pitches and I hear writers' ideas. And that's what I respond to, is can we take this idea and make it into a hit series on a platform or a network? That's really what we have to do. And we also then look at who's buying the show, who will buy the show. We're not going to take a show that feels so other and go to one brand. We'll go to another. We'll go to the companies that put these kinds of shows on the air and know that that's good for business and know So the thing about Sony is we don't have to feed one platform. We're not like some of the other siloed companies now. We actually can just develop a show because the creator has the passion for it. And that's really how it's got to start. And then we can look at every brand out there, every network out there, every over-the-top platform out there and see who's going to buy that show. But we're not limited by our own company and corporate mandate.
That's awesome. Did you have
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that Young Entertainment Activists is a really good resource as well because we have access to such a diverse population. We're making a serious effort, especially because of this panel, to make relationships with HR at multiple companies. So the HR company, come to us and say, who are some diverse voices, faces, people that we can have direct access to share our values. So we also want to say that we can be resources because we do have so many young people that you guys can contact us and say, where are your trans people? Where are your queer people that we can hire? And it's a little bit more direct so we can speed up the process.
Awesome. Thank you. Getting the wrap it up sign.
Thank you all again so much. What a beautiful room. Thank you again.